Anastasia and John were on cloud nine with happiness. They were soon expecting a baby, and then the long-awaited son, George, was born. John's mother, upon seeing her grandson, never warmed up to him from that day on. He didn't resemble John at all, being fair-skinned like Anastasia. The mother-in-law immediately passed her judgment. Strange. We've never had one like this before. All the others were dark-skinned with dark hair, he's neither ours nor John's. They all whispered behind the child's back. Initially, John argued with his mother, but eventually, he too started to believe it. Like a festival, all the children gathered at their parents' house, and all the grandchildren had gifts from their grandmother. Except for George. She refused to acknowledge him, and that was that. Anastasia, knowing her son had nothing to expect, started buying him things herself so he wouldn't feel left out. When they visited his grandparents, she discreetly pulled a present out of her bag, handed it to George, and said, "Here, son, this is from Grandma and Grandpa. You're the first one." And he happily ran to hug them, thanking them, but they didn't even look at him. Then Anastasia fell ill. It was a serious illness, cunning, and she knew her time was short. Who would look after her son after she was gone? They didn't accept him, considering him an outsider. So she taught him everything. "George, my son. If you stain your clothes, fill a basin with water and wash them, look how it's done. And if a button falls off or something tears, this is how you sew it back on." She taught him everything. By the time the boy reached the 5th grade, Anastasia had passed away. His father drank and partied, completely forgetting about his son. Social services and the grandparents were visited by school and social workers. "What's going on here? A child alone at home without supervision. Since the father is drinking, take the boy with you for now. If nothing changes, we'll have to consider depriving the father of his parental rights." They thought about it and decided to take custody of their grandson. And the extra income didn't hurt either. Besides him, the old couple had 2 other grandsons who visited them every day. George, as his mother had taught him, helped around the house, was obedient, but somehow always ended up being blamed for everything. His brothers misbehaved, but he got punished. "Did Grandma bring anything from the store?" "George, check the bags." "What delicious treats did Grandma bring?" "Oh, gingerbread." But before he could even taste it, Grandma would sharply hit his hand. While everyone else rested, he was sent to the garden to dig beds. It wasn't hard for him, he did everything right. He would come back tired, hungry, change his clothes, wash his hands, and go to the kitchen. He wanted to pour soup into a bowl when suddenly Grandma jumped in, scolding him. "Don't touch it, the others haven't eaten yet." So George lived, without love and affection. Despite not having time for his studies, there was always some work for him in the house. Yet he studied well, praised by his teachers. "Well done, Grandma, you're raising your grandson well. He's polite and always pleasant at school." And no one suspected that George washed, ironed, and mended his clothes himself. Now that his studies were over, he needed to move forward, but no one mentioned it. He pleaded with his grandmother, but she brushed him off. "Education? What nonsense. Focus on the house. Everything's a mess." "Education, where did you get that idea? Just sit tight." But the grandmother worried a lot about her other grandchildren. She called all her relatives in the cities, asking them to take one of the grandchildren in for the duration of their studies. After a while, Uncle Andre arrived. He was Grandma's cousin. Uncle Andre worked as a factory director in a big city. He responded to the family's request and decided to take one of the grandchildren to live with him during their studies. His own children were already grown up, so why not help out in a good cause? He stayed for a week, observed the grandchildren, talked to them, and then said to Grandma, "Well, Maria, get your grandson ready. It's time. His entrance exams are coming up soon, and we'll take him with us. She was overjoyed. Anatoly, hurry home and pack your bags, Uncle Andrei will take you with him. Anatoly? No, gathered George, there's no use for your Anatoly, but George is already a grown man. Grandma didn't expect that, she frowned. But who will do everything for us now, help with the household chores? Well, who else but Anatoly and Vadim, and you might as well not bother packing anything. Mr. Andrei noticed that the teenager had long outgrown his trousers, and there were patches on the elbows of his only sweater. We've been saving up for him there too. Thus began another life for George, where he first felt like a human being. His life turned out well. He graduated from college and started working at the factory where Uncle Andrei was the director. And when the time came for Mr. Andrei to retire, and George had gained enough experience, he handed over the reins of management to him. Now I can retire peacefully. The factory is in good hands. George got married, and he and his wife raised their own son and 2 adopted children. And not once did anyone in the family feel like an outsider. They loved everyone equally.